Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 188.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I am your host, Jay Massey, and you know what? I am glad that you're here because you know, like I know, this real estate game is not owned by any one person, and more importantly, it exists outside of your home country. And that's one of the most important things that I absolutely enjoy. Once you understand how to do real estate, in my opinion, you can go to any country, anywhere, and figure out a business in no time flat. And I'm serious about that. In fact, today's guests have done that very thing for a number of people and have been doing it for a number of years. And most importantly, they're going to share with you their journey and how they've made the international world accessible to some of you who have been stuck in the U.S. for far too long and are looking for an excuse to go outside, because we will definitely make sure that you have a reason. Think about it this way. Today's guests have done things in the vacation rental space, the single family house space, the multifamily house office space. They have done it in multiple countries. They're going to share with us why and how they've created their business. But most importantly, you could call them like a Jack and Jill of all trades. And now they invest their time co-investing and direct ownership positions with their investors and making sure that the money continues to grow and produces cash flow. Today's guests are Matthew and Kira McClellan of Direct Source Wealth, and they are going to share with us their infinite knowledge and, most importantly, help you and I build our cash flow. Help me welcome Matthew and Kira. Matthew and Kira, you guys there?
Yes, we are. Hi, Jay.
I'm glad that you guys are here. Thanks for taking the time. I'm sure there are many, many, many things you would love to be doing, but I definitely appreciate you taking the time to invest with us here. Now, I often ask the same question of everybody the first time. So I'm going to ask both of you this same question. I mean, before you guys were, doing, deals in Washington and Colorado, Arizona, Illinois, Puerto Rico, France, all of these wonderful places, before all of that was going on, what I like to think about is that today's entrepreneurs are a lot like yesterday's superheroes. So at the end of the day, before Superman was super and Spidey was, slinging webs and saving people, entrepreneurs did the same thing. They were normal people before they started going around and saving people, etc. So you have an origin story just like every other superhero on the planet. So before you were, what you are today, before you were the investors who were well-traveled and helping and saving lives in that sense, who is Matthew and Kira?
Well, when I don't have the cape on and I'm just grocery shopping.
Yes, exactly.
That was a great intro. I really don't know what to say now. Maybe saying nothing is best, but I have personally been intrigued in marketing, and particularly guerrilla marketing, most of my career. I had a couple companies and still do here and in Puerto Rico. We do a pretty well-rounded guerrilla marketing approach, very targeted. And about 5 years ago, I got into the single-family real estate space, and then the commercial office space, and then multifamily. So I've kind of progressed through, we'll say, trial and error, and getting my boots muddy along with my wife, Kira, and now our newborn baby. But of 10 weeks, he's so cute. And with every day in the real estate game, we have a certain passion for it. But that's pretty much my background. I'll let Kira go on.
Yeah, Jay, thank you for that enthusiastic perspective on it. I mean, it's interesting to have, I'm constantly confronted with the fact that there's always new investors getting started. And I've got over a decade now as a real estate investor. I bought my first property when I was 18 years old, grew up as an insomniac child watching, Robert Kiyosaki and on infomercials and knew from early on that that's what I wanted to do. And so, for me, it's hard to relate to something as an origin story because every day still feels like the beginning. Every single day I am coming to work trying to figure out how to do better, how to do more, and how to go to the next level. And so it's strange, honestly, to think about like, okay, where did I come from? Because it's just every day is brand new. And that's what makes it exciting. That's what keeps it real. Is I don't really have like a history point to look back on. It's more looking forward, to what the next opportunity is and how we can help people next.
It's interesting that you bring that up. That every day is brand new. I almost don't even really look at my calendar because it's like it doesn't really matter what day of the week it is. It's it's just gonna be another day. It's gonna be what it is, and we're gonna deal with it. Now, Matthew, you said something that I think is important for everybody to understand.
Okay.
You mentioned the idea of trial and error and muddy boots. First of all, you're not supposed to have muddy boots in the house, so make sure that you teach the 10-week-old that you can't do that. Okay, no muddy boots in the house. But the trial and error piece, so many people, I think, run because they want to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
Okay, so you agree.
Absolutely.
So where did you develop the courage then to experiment or go through this trial and error process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I personally never considered myself to be a real estate guy, or for that matter, a financial guy. I studied on the side, and I surrounded myself with people that knew things about real estate and finances that I did not know. I felt very confident in my marketing. I felt very confident with my clients and the client base. I really didn't even have to advertise for each office that I opened up. And I was kind of in my comfort zone, right? When you go through life, I'm sure everybody can identify with that. And I realized that I wanted to expand not only my knowledge of real estate, but use it as a vehicle. And I knew that I had to learn that somewhere. So I started to surround myself with the right people.
That's so important.
And that's the biggest thing. I think personally, if I could tell anybody, yes, I was scared. Yes, when I put out my first 20,000. Yes, when I put out my first 100,000. And yes, when I put out my 300,000 and so on. Every single time I was scared. Right. But I learned something new each time, and I paid attention. And now, you can kind of see patterns, and you can find formulas. Even in the real estate market, it's an ever-changing market. You know this, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners do. What we know one day works may not work the next day.
Hold on, next day?
The next
sure
minute,
it's that
right?
long? Come on.
Yeah, that's Matthew. That's a really good point, and I think I work with a lot of women investors, and I'm not going to try to be gender biased here, but I'm going to be completely gender biased here. And I'm going to say that one of the huge advantages we have is working as a couple. Most couples tend to have one person, and it's not always one gender or the other, but one person who's more conservative, more, analytical, boots on the like feet on the ground, let's make sure we do it right, by the book. And the other person who's more of a risk taker, more wants to, carpe diem and go out there and make things happen and solve problems as they come up and not worry about it, And
oh yeah, my wife knows a lot.
Yeah. and usually, interestingly enough, usually it's the husband is more aggressive and the wife is usually more conservative. My husband and I think happen to be a little bit opposite in that. I'm definitely the risk taker. And so what's great about that is, as I mentioned earlier, I work with a lot of women. So, and we work with a lot of couples where I can connect with the wife and kind of help explain like what that other perspective is and how to mitigate it. And I can also explain to the husbands, like, why it's so important to really honor and understand the wife's perspective as well, or whoever the more conservative partner is, because it's the balance between the two that makes deals work. Too many people in this business are really aggressive risk takers, and they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing until they have all in on a huge deal, and then the market turns or something happens and they lose it all and they're starting over. It's happened to so many smart people I know. And if they had that partner, if they had that spouse that was kind of grounding them a little bit more, then and the more aggressive spouse is kind of pulling the other one along, you really end up in a much better situation. Both people have a better life because of it. Both people, Matthew and I say all the time, we have a safety net because of the way he thinks and the way he operates. And we make sure that we always have our needs taken care of. And we also have phenomenal opportunity because of the way I operate. And together, that's what makes it work. And, I wasn't as good of an investor before I started working with my husband. And I think, if I could be so bold to say, I don't think he was until he started working with me.
Absolutely. I've learned an incredible amount along the way. And as a team, I would totally agree.
And so that helps, to get to your original question, that helps with that pit of fear in the stomach, which I still get every deal I do. And I know if I'm not feeling that, I'm not doing something interesting enough. I'm staying in my comfort zone. I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to progress. So I like and hate that feeling at the same time. But knowing that, we have this partnership, and that we also, again, going back to co-investing, the fact that we work with lots of other investors and we're very transparent and we get their input and feedback and we really solve problems collectively, that mitigates that risk, and that keeps us constantly willing to take new challenges, because at the end of the day, with that collective level of intelligence of ourselves and all of our investors, there's no way we can't solve any problem. There will be problems, but we have the people in place and we're open with them when there's issues, and that way we can solve them and make everything better.
Indeed. And we will definitely attack there will be problems part in just a moment. But you said something that I thought was awesome, is if you don't have that pit in your stomach, you're not doing something interesting enough. And I think you and I suffer from the same disease, because I've jumped from single family houses to multifamily houses, commercial. We're doing some cell phone towers and resorts now. It's like, it stopped holding my interest, and I didn't want to keep doing the same thing over and over and over.
Right.
And over. It's like, come on, we've done that. We've already done that. Who cares? But
exactly.
Yeah.
And by not having that fear, that's how, like you mentioned, the deals in Puerto Rico. I mean, I have moved from various markets at different times, and we've taken on all kinds of new deals. And if we were driven by our fear, we'd never have been able to do that. We'd never would have been able to expand beyond sort of our own backyard. And there's a lot of investors that just never get bigger than their own backyard. And it's fine. It's a valid way to run your investment business. Not everyone wants to be a Donald Trump,
I'll keep my hair. Thanks.
Right. but some people want to be bigger than they are right now. And that's what kind of chasing that opportunity is all about.
Well, and at the end of the day, sometimes that person is better suited outside their marketplace anyway.
Right.
You never know what is out there until you start poking at it. And I like to poke to find and uncover and solve some more problems. Now, there's something. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just agreeing. I said, that's right. You have to turn the flashlight on sometimes to see what's in the room,
Indeed. Now, you mentioned that there will be problems. That was a definitive statement. And I know a lot of people who want to avoid problems at all costs, so much so they ask well, what if this happens? And what if this happens? And but what if on a Tuesday it rains and that happens to be the exact same day rent is due, and then they slip, and then now what happened? Okay.
Right. Right.
So my question to you is, how do you internally deal with that? But more importantly, how does someone get themselves out of that position mentally so that they can take the action?
It's a good question. We deal with a lot of investors who get stuck in what we call analysis paralysis.
I had assumed. That's why I asked.
Yeah. And here's the thing. One has to be realistic in the fact that you can't just jump in 2 feet forward, hoping everything's going to work out without any game plan, right? That's one extreme, and that's unhealthy. And then you have another extreme, which is like you're mentioning, the client that wants to know every tiny possible detail has been thought out, even things you couldn't think you might need to think about. And the answer is, you've got, just like everything in life, really, you have to be able to learn the balance and the tension between two virtues, right? So you have this virtue of prudence. And I'm stealing from Aristotle here. So if this sounds familiar to anyone, I give him full credit, right? You have the virtue of prudence, and then you have this virtue of action. And if you're in one virtue too far to the extreme, now you have a vice, right? You're stuck, or you're going way too aggressive. And a practical way to get yourself sort of centered in the middle is sort of what I touched on previously. Partnership, right? Working with, in my case, it's my husband and I. It might be a good girlfriend. It might be someone you work with that you get along with well, who balances you out. You're never going to change. I don't believe people change fundamentally who they are, but success comes from recognizing, knowing who you are, leveraging the strengths of who you are, and surrounding yourself, as my husband said earlier, with other people who have different strengths. So that if you are that really, really focused, what if analysis kind of person, I want you on my team. I want you bringing up every crazy idea that could possibly maybe happen, so that I can be thinking about potential solutions. But you also want me, because I'm going to push you out of your comfort zone. And we both do this with our investors a lot. I will ask their permission, of course, first, but I'll say, look, I am going to push you. I am going to sometimes tell you, like, if I recognize that you have a certain personality trait to be overly stuck in analysis, I'm going to tell you, okay, now you got to make a decision. You got to choose. Like, this is it. We're done. We're done asking questions. Like, time to either make a commitment or not. And more often than not, that's part of why investors like working as part of a team or part of a co-investment group, because that is a strength to a point, and it can become a problem. But if they recognize that strength, if it's leveraged appropriately, then it makes everybody stronger. And then people who are more action prone help pull that person along so that they can share in the success. Too many times, the investors who are like what you're describing also try to operate alone. They want to keep everything under their control. And that's the kiss of death, because they won't be able to ever get outside of themselves. They've got to build relationships with other investors that they respect and trust, who are different from them. And that way they can overcome. And I would say the same is true for the overly aggressive investors. They have to recognize their strength and where it's appropriate, and partner themselves with people who maybe are a little bit more cautious, a little more careful, to create a powerful team that can actually make a win for everybody.
I'm laughing because depending on how many of my team are actually listening to this, they're chuckling, because it's really clear who the action taker is and who the conservative people are. It's basically anyone that's not me is the conservative person. Because they're constantly saying, we're busy, stop, I gotta think about, and how are we going to pull that off? I'm like, I don't know. Figure it out. Anyway,
Right.
it works, and you're right, and that's one of the things that I think is necessary. That yin and yang. I like what you said about the balance and tension. Those things must be indeed present. Now, as we think about the whole idea of superheroes and entrepreneurs being those superheroes, just in the way Peter Parker got bit by a spider, it's one thing that, you get a gift and then you begin to realize that you have it. It's another to go out there and share it. So what on earth inspired you guys to go, we've got something here. Let's share it with more people and help them. Why did you choose to not keep the gift to yourself and share it with other people?
Yeah, we've been asked that question a couple times, and I've heard a few different variations of this answer. How's that? We were doing it on our own, and we had built a successful single family portfolio and started to move into multifamily because what we found, at least with the way we were doing single family, was that we were building ourselves a job. And Kira discusses this quite a bit in some of our live presentations. And it turns out that, yes, you can have 10, 20, 50, 90, 130, whatever it may be, single family properties. You could have property management. You could have all of that in place. And if it's done properly, absolutely, you could have passivity, and I know there's systems out there for that. What we decided to do, Jay, was look to consolidate our doors, so to speak. So if we're going to have 100 properties out there, why not have 100 units in a high cap rate area, the right area, and focus our efforts instead of running around kind of, as they say, like a chicken with your head cut off, right? Dealing with renters, dealing with scraping popcorn ceilings and putting in tiles and snaking toilets and blowing leaves.
Whoa. Hold on. You didn't enjoy that? I mean, come on. That you are destroying everybody's dream right now. They said, I want to be a real estate. Oh God, I got to do that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'll tell you what, when I first started at 19, it was actually pretty cool. There is a place for it, but you get tired of it pretty quickly. That's for sure.
And so what we did was we decided to take the steps ourselves. There's a lot of folks out there that do read a lot of books, that do go to a lot of classes and things like that. And we've got people that'll ask us, so let's say we're at a trade show or something. So do you do classes? And we basically respond with, the only class that we really do is when you co-invest with us on a deal and you learn what happens in a real deal. And as Kira mentioned earlier, there's always scenarios. There's always something. It just depends on how you handle it and if you've structured in the right margins and you're prepared for life, as best anyone possibly can be without a crystal ball. And when we got to that point, Jay, we decided that part of our mission, and I'll let Kira explain where the name Direct Source Wealth comes from, is it was a direct source. It's how can you help people find a better way? How can you help people find passive income, whether it's what they do full time or part time or whatever it may be, whether it's a couple $100 a month or a couple $1,000 a month or tens of thousands of dollars a month? How do you give them a vehicle or even multiple vehicles to be able to do that for themselves and empower them to do that for themselves? Well, then you go down all of these thought processes. Okay, we're going to start doing this. We're going to start doing that. And we just decided to start basically sharing some of our tools on, the tools that we use to be able to find the right deals in the right areas with the right numbers, right? And we started getting a great response for that because people wanted to educate themselves. They weren't just looking for a quick fix or a get rich quick scheme or whatever it may be that goes through people's minds. Okay, I'm going to be a billionaire in the next year. But there are
killing dreams again.
Well, you might be a billionaire in the next year. It depends on the financial reach, right? And this goes back to another question: is when we talk about pushing people outside of their sometimes comfort zones, it's because someone may need a certain income every month, right? And if you can reverse engineer that properly, you can find a number that they're going to have to be able to work with financially to be able to reach that goal. And so we do that for each of our clients, and we give them a game plan, a roadmap. Let's call it Candyland,
Nice.
or whatever your favorite game was, Life, maybe, I don't know, or
Monopoly, actually, but
Monopoly,
it's all good.
yeah, Chutes and Ladders, right? Okay, so I'm sure we're all dating ourselves now with these games, right?
Right. Well, let's take a break right there. Games are what existed before apps and iPhones. For
Yes.
all of you
Yes.
wondering, it's an actual physical board that sits on a table, and people got together in person.
Yeah, I love it.
And actually played. Yes. Now
That's
you
right.
can continue. They're caught up.
Very good. I love it, Jay. All right. So basically, that's really why we wanted to bring it to people, was because yes, we could keep doing this on our own, but also there is strength in numbers in many ways. And if you can find the right group of people, you don't have to agree all the time, but like minds and goals, and people who think about generational wealth and how to protect that. And that type of glue, we'll say, that comes within any relationship is the kind of glue that we like to have with our clients, and slowly friends and family and strangers started visiting our websites or found our phone numbers from some other trade show or podcast or webinar that we were guests on. And we really thought, hey, we've got something here. Why don't we continue to share it? And so that's what we did. And like I said, I think direct source wealth is a term, a group of words that I'm going to let Kira elaborate on where that really came from, and I think it'll help convey the message, hopefully, that I'm trying to get across, Jay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Matthew. So direct source wealth has two real meanings to it. Direct source is a fundamental belief that we have that it's best to be a direct investor. So rather than going through layers and layers of funds and fund managers and another fund manager, that it's really great to be just directly invested. That's just a personal preference that we have, and that's how we structure our deals, is the opportunity to be directly invested, to have collateral you can see and touch and feel. It's very tactile in that sense. But also direct source, meaning directly connected to the source with a capital S.
Nice.
And recognizing that we're all stewards of resources, and that that all wealth, that all abundance comes directly from source. That it's not, while we have a role in creating it, we are not making it from nothing, but we are
Right.
receiving it and managing it and being good stewards of those resources. And that's a real fundamental value to us. In fact, I wrote an article about that on our website. It's dealing with First Timothy and the idea of the love of money is the root of all evil. Because I have a fundamental belief, an economic bias, that we are changing our country. We are changing internationally the way countries relate to one another, the way people relate to one another. And we are moving from a very competitive economic worldview into a collaborative worldview. And I have a fundamental belief that there is such a thing called the collaborative advantage, as opposed to the old economic, competitive advantage. And that, I don't want to mince my words here. I mean, when we share, we gain. We win. We make more money when we do more deals. We get better diversification. We can take down bigger projects, so we have better economy of scale. There's definitely direct benefit in it for us, right? I don't ever want to sound like, I'm just a really nice girl. I am a nice girl, but there's something in it for me, and I'm always going to be transparent about that.
Right.
And what makes it work is that there's also something in it for all the other investors.
Right.
And we're really creating genuine win-win scenarios. And that's the thing about sharing that interests me. I'm a classic, liberal economist, classic like Ayn Rand. People want something to be in it for them. I don't think there's anything, dirty or wrong about, wanting to be successful and wanting to be profitable. And where it gets ugly is when it's at the expense of others. And I believe that it doesn't have to be that way, that we can share, we can work together, and everyone can do better for it.
And you interestingly enough, I don't know how you guys feel, but the more she talks, the more they keep talking, the more I like them. And that's really cool because you're welcome. Because we often talk about the concept here of cooperative capitalism versus competitive capitalism.
Oh, I love it.
And that's typically what we call it because, that whole thing is, yes, I can do a deal, but we can benefit together faster, more. We can go longer. We can weather more storms. We can actually change zip codes and neighborhoods. And that's the whole thing behind us and why we tend to do the larger projects that we do is so that we don't just make a dollar, we make a difference. And that's really what it comes down to in a lot of ways. And what I want everybody to hear is that there's another concept that we always talk about is investor identity. You are very, very clear on your investor identity and how and why things work the way that they do. So it's no wonder that you're able to polarize and attract those to you that make sense. And every person here is all about value for value. No one wants anything for free. And I think we're really, really clear that we create an immense amount of jobs and clean, safe, affordable housing for individuals when we go out there to do what we do. Now, one thing though that Matthew said, I'm a little upset though because he said he didn't have a crystal ball, and
you had me scared for a second. You had me, Jay.
Good. I'm like, come on, man, you got to have a crystal ball. But more realistically, you said something about a better way. You mentioned passive income, which for me, there's so many ways to skin this real estate cat. I have to ask, why Puerto Rico? Okay. If you haven't picked up on this already, opportunity is, everywhere. And by everywhere, I mean even on the street light that you just passed. Every time you went to the movie theater, every time you go to an amusement park, anything you were doing, there's opportunity. So, of course, there's opportunity in Puerto Rico, and we'll get right back to that in just a moment. Just a quick reminder for those of you who haven't yet picked up your complimentary, that means free copy of Cashflow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. The electronic version is yours. Just send a text message to 72000. The keyword is book, BOOK. You will get your copy emailed directly to you as soon as you give us your details. Anyway, I know a number of you right now, you just probably want to know, hey, what's going on in Puerto Rico? And let's get back to that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure that's a lot of people right now that they have this on their mind. Originally, Kira and I were looking for a way to protect our assets. And that's really what got us started down the road. There's so many different structures, right? There's so many different classes and gurus and all of these things to show you about asset protection, show you about different ways to enjoy certain tax benefits and things like that. And so we really dug in again. We found something else that we wanted to sink our teeth into and not just research it and not just ask about it, but we actually moved to Puerto Rico for 6 months. And immersed ourselves in the culture, and immersed ourselves in the business culture and everything. And we were really just going down to find a home or a condo or something on a nice beach, and get our tax break. And we can elaborate more on that if you want for Act 20, Act 22, and Act 74. But and so we kind of went down and made our connections with attorneys and CPAs and found the good ones, found the bad ones, found everything. They knew us as the Americanos from the east side of the island to the west side of the island. We very quickly made a name for ourselves, unintentionally, by the way. But because we dug so much and because we contacted so many people to try and really find out and really immerse ourselves into that culture and find out how to benefit from the tax breaks, but also when we got there, help the actual culture by stimulating the economy. And that's really what those acts are meant to do in the first place. So that's really what drug us down there, so to speak. We got a phone call from a very good friend of ours who is an owner of a IRA custodian, and they said, you really need to come down here. And we said, when? And they said, how about tonight? And so we jumped on a plane, and for 24 hours, that's it. We were in Puerto Rico for the first time for myself and first time for Kira. And, we didn't even know that you didn't need a passport. We just, and we just jumped on the planes and we flew out. At that time, I was visiting family in Clearwater, Florida. But basically, you've got this amazing opportunity down there, and we decided to immerse ourselves in it. Well, now we come back, going on a year now since we've done that, and we bring back that knowledge. So not only do you find out how to make money, but also how to keep it. I had a guy tell me when I was a much younger man, and he hit his first 10 million. And I said, wow, that is just incredible. And you're such a good example of how to, do business and, all of these things. Right. And he said, Matthew, he said, you'll learn something. He said, making it's the first part, keeping it's the other part, because everybody wants a piece of it. And I realized that there was so much more to money than just making money. It brings up new challenges. And so we discovered a way to mitigate risk and to mitigate some of our tax liabilities and things like that legally, not considered offshore, within the U.S. Territory of Puerto Rico. And then we found a way to build that bridge from that little island over to the U.S. And here we are today with yet another system. And I'm gonna let Kira elaborate a little bit more on that.
What's interesting right now is that I'm imagining somebody listening right now, looking up, where's Puerto Rico?
Right. That's what we had to do. Yeah.
They're like, is that on this? Is it? How close is it to the? Can I walk? No.
Past Cuba. Past Cuba.
Interestingly enough, though, the big airlines have moved their major portions of their businesses down there too. So there's a lot more direct flights from places than there used to be, even just in the last year. And to Matthew's point, what brought us there was the personal business reasons. But when we got there, what we found was that Puerto Rico, it was actually using your conversation about being superheroes. I felt for the first time like a real superhero in Puerto Rico because I could see the future.
Yeah.
And Puerto Rico operates about 3 to 5 years behind the U.S. economy. It's just a little bit of a lagging economy to what's going on in the United States. And so, what we had seen happen in terms of the economic crisis and then the recovery and then now the boom that's happening, Puerto Rico was a little bit further behind. And so as an investor, I'm always looking for, how do I continue to make margin? How do I continue to find good deals and make sure I'm not overpaying? And the deal in Puerto Rico represented that because it was like, I could see what was going to happen next to bring the market together, because I saw it happen in Phoenix, and then I saw it happen in Chicago, and then I saw, so throughout the U.S., I've seen these cycles happen, and I could tell sort of where they were in that economic cycle. I try to target, pretty high cash on cash returns, and our deals in Puerto Rico are kicking off, 37%. Cash on cash returns as of the last the last accounting I did on the vacation rentals. And that doesn't even include the added benefit that happens to my long-term rentals back in the United States, because by having a vacation rental, I can now bundle my long-term rentals and I can offer a week's stay in my vacation rental to my tenants and my long-term rentals back in the States. And that decreases my turnover. It increases my payments. It decreases my uncollectibles accounts. Those benefits aren't even factored into my cash-on-cash return just on the vacation rentals.
I think I just heard someone buy a plane ticket. So, before they get there, tell us a little bit about some of because you've mentioned it a number of times, and there's probably, a number of people who are in the know at this moment that are listening that probably know some of the tax benefits, et cetera, and those tax reasons. Elaborate a little bit on some, I think you mentioned Act 20, 22, and 74, as well as some of those reasons that we may not be aware of to make an investment down outside of our home country, or home. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will be the first to admit I always confused 20 and 22 because we did them together and I can never remember which one was for which. One is a residential relocation, which I believe is Law 22. So that's where you actually move to Puerto Rico as your residency, as documented by spending 183 days or more per year there and having a closer connection to Puerto Rico than anywhere in the United States. By doing that, by being basically an immigrant into Puerto Rico, you get a 25-year tax decree. It's an actual tax decree from the Puerto Rican tax authority, which operates under the full tax authority as a territory, under the full tax authority mandated by IRS tax code. And that gives people who move down there and meet their residency requirement 0% income tax.
Say that again.
Yeah,
zero. I want to make sure people can calculate the number.
Yeah. Try to do the number. 0%. That's both federal and territory. So that's not, so you move to Texas or Florida or Washington, you don't pay state income tax, but you still pay federal. You move to Puerto Rico and you pay zero on all of it. But this is, you got to look at the fine print to really fully understand, but this is not salary. This is dividends, interest, capital gains income, that would be taxed under Puerto Rico tax law. So there are some subtleties, obviously on a podcast, you can't explain all the subtleties of something like this, but the main point is that you can drastically reduce your taxable income without going overseas. We didn't want to go, overseas. We didn't want to, take bags full of, $10,000 cash at a time to Switzerland or whatever people try to do.
They stopped us. At the airport. I don't know.
That's just not our approach. We wanted something that was legal, U.S. tax law, by the book, the right way to do it. So that's Law 22. And then Law 20 is the business tax law. That allowed us to relocate our business to Puerto Rico. This is for people who maybe their kids are in school. They just can't pick up and relocate to Puerto Rico, but they can move their business there. And as long as their business meets certain export service requirements, which we actually have a little turnkey program to help people figure that out if they qualify and establish themselves there, and they meet certain employee requirements, then their business pays only 4% income tax. So it's not quite zero, but if you can't quite pick up and move to Puerto Rico, you do have the 4% option, which is also very powerful. Obviously, it makes a big difference and gives people a lot more net income. So you can choose to either, work less and make the same amount of money or work just as much and keep more of your money. But they're wonderful, wonderful tax incentives that I believe will help. Again, going back to my core economic values, they'll use free market principles, low tax barriers to generate investment dollars in Puerto Rico and help them recover from a very difficult position they're in right now.
Someone just said, ready, set, go. That's all I'm going to say on that one. And you guys have already been down there. And, there's probably a number of questions and concerns that I'm sure a number of people have about just how you guys operate and how to this whole Puerto Rico thing. And they're like, what? Remember, we just learned that Puerto Rico it's not on the other side of the planet.
Right.
So, although for some of you in the UK and Germany, you might consider that the other side of the planet.
Maybe.
That's right. Okay too. That's okay too. What would be, in your expert opinion, what is the, I guess, expectation of a piece of vacation rental property? Because I live in, California, and everything here is more than it should be, even the air. So I have to know what's a decent vacation rental going to cost me.
Yeah, and that's the part that's so amazing. Remember, you're buying a place in the Caribbean. The water's warm all year round. There's 4 beaches within a short driving distance. Literally, we'd wake up sometimes to the sound of coconuts falling out of the tree. I mean, there's just these spectacular views of the lighthouses and the ships, coming in. And I mean, it's just a wonderful place. And yet you can pick up, you're not even going to believe this coming from California, but you could pick up, 1,800 to 3,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2 or 3 bath vacation rental for between $150,000 and $200,000.
And there goes another plane ticket someone just bought.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. And then, the cost of being there is about the same. Food and other things cost about what they cost in the States. You're not paying ridiculously high island prices, but they're not dirt cheap. You're paying kind of regular cost of living for that. And you can expect to rent that place out for between $150 and $200 a night. Depending on, is it Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, or is it just, someday in the middle of September? So, good steady rental income. Our properties down there that we're working with investors on have about a year track record at this point. So it takes about 3 years to really stabilize a vacation rental, because there is, repeat visitors that come. And so it takes a couple years to get to stabilized occupancy. But, once you are there, you can expect to be operating at, 60, 75% occupancy.
And talk to me a little bit about the financing that exists there. Go ahead.
This is the beauty of it, because, in 2006, I purchased some places out in Europe. I did some deals in France and other places throughout Europe. And it's much harder. So Puerto Rico's nice because you have that kind of international flavor. You have some Latin American, culture and flavor, but you're not having to worry about buying technically internationally. You can finance your purchase through Banco Popular, which has branches in New York, in LA. Banesco has branches in Florida. We do all of our closings through Stewart Title. So that is part of what made Puerto Rico so interesting to us. You get a lot of the higher returns and the exposures that you want from doing quote unquote international investing. But you are able to mitigate a lot of the risk because of it being a territory of the United States.
And, that's definitely one of those most important things. Every time I go international, one of the first questions I'm asking is, how do I hold title? Right. Or do I hold title? And where do I have to be from to hold title? And people have asked me, why don't you do a deal in Mexico? It's just down the street, which in California, it is just down the street. But it's things like that keep me away. But we're on but when it comes down to owning, fee simple title and being able to still do and operate in a very similar fashion that you're used to, that becomes hyper important. So At this stage, you guys have been able to assist a number of investors and help a ton of people, and I'm sure by now, if we haven't, I'm sure we've generated at least somebody looking up where Puerto Rico is. We've educated people; their geography is better, but I'm sure they still have a few more questions. What's going to be the absolute best way for them to track you guys down and get some more of those questions answered?
Yeah, sure. Number one, you can always go to directsourcewealth.com, and kind of play around a little bit on there. You'll see different opportunities, and you'll see previous deals. You'll see pictures and things like that of Puerto Rico. But also just contact us. You can contact me directly, Matthew, MATTHEW, at Direct Source Wealth, and I'll be happy to forward any of you anything, or email me your questions, your bullet points, or you can also call in and schedule what we like to call a strategy session, where we will sit down with you and discuss all of the different things, whether they be in Puerto Rico or other places. And that number is 720-445-4546. That's 720-445-4546. And we'd be happy to be able to answer any kind of questions via email or phone.
Excellent. Now, let's pretend for a second that someone that's listening right now, and I want to hear from both of you on this one, that someone is standing outside that superhero outfit store. They're deciding, I think I got an idea. I think I can do business. I don't really know. But they're picking out their cape and their tights and their mask if they want to. But they still feel a little hesitation, a little trepidation, a little, oh, what am I really doing here? What would you say to that person, knowing what you know today?
Hopefully Nike doesn't come after me, but I'd say just do it. That's the quick answer. The more detailed answer is, that's exactly why we're here. It's why we do what we do. Jumping into, for example, a deal like, Puerto Rico is amazing because the properties have been operating for a year. They already have cash flow. You can see what's coming in. There's, turnkey property management. It's a nice way for an investor to ease themselves into being involved as an investor and not having to know everything all at once. I wish if I had done it over again. When I first started investing, there really weren't, turnkey investment companies. This is a relatively recent phenomenon coming out of the last, economic shift. But it's such a great way to learn as you go. But make sure, whether it's us or anyone else, any one of our fine colleagues, make sure that whomever you're investing with is really transparent and communicative, because that's how you're going to learn. If you just invest with a turnkey company and you're not getting a lot of feedback, you're never going to learn on your own, how to do deals. So it's jump in, it's just do it. Work with a turnkey company. And that way you mitigate kind of your lessons up front, but make sure that they're open and transparent and you're learning from them as you go.
Yeah, I just, and I couldn't agree more. There's definitely something to, having those resources. I know, and just going back to Puerto Rico, we went down there. I really don't know how to speak much Spanish at all. And most of the folks down there do speak English. They have bilingual schools, but they don't like to speak too much, unless you kind of show that you've tried to learn their culture a little bit, just like almost anywhere in the world, I think. And there is something to going into a place and finding out things the hard way, we'll say, what to do, what's acceptable in that culture, what's not, how their business days operate, all of that. And if someone is considering Puerto Rico, I would definitely say that there's an abundant supply of research online and there are billionaire after billionaire that you can find online, going and putting at least a portion of their cash down in Puerto Rico, and there's a reason for that, but it's not easy. So know that when you go into that, everything you know about real estate on what I call stateside U.S. Soil is basically different down in the Caribbean. And I'm sure anybody that's been down to different Caribbean territories and countries and so you've noticed the same thing. But yes, I would say having a liaison and having a real honest talk with what you're getting into is great. Sure, the cash on cash returns are great. The opportunity is excellent. The tax haven's excellent. But you can save yourself a lot of money, and you can save yourself a lot of headaches if you know what's going on. And realistically, Puerto Rico is a very small island. Everybody knows everybody down there, and even some of the smaller islands off of what they call the Big Island of Puerto Rico. So definitely having some type of liaison, having some type of very real talk with what you're expecting to happen and what is likely to happen. Is a conversation that anybody who is considering Puerto Rico should definitely have, and we are here to have that conversation. We don't pull the flowers out and the tulips and the cookies and the milk and make it sound perfect. We will tell you very candidly what to look out for from our own experience.
Yep, makes perfect sense. One of the things that I just want to make sure that I say is thank you for taking the time to invest with us here, your knowledge, your experience, and expertise with the Cashflow Diary.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jay. We appreciate your hospitality, and all of the listeners also.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What on earth does that mean today? Now, some of you've probably already purchased your plane ticket. That's great. You are moving at the speed of instruction. But for the rest of you, get over to directsourcewealth.com. Why? Because you felt like, I got to go find out how on earth can I have a 3,000 square foot vacation rental at that price? I know I was thinking it. Now go act on it. You will never make $1 on a property you don't own or move towards. You've got to do something within the next 24 to 48 hours to put yourself one step closer to that dream life, that reality that you can indeed have if you are, dare I say, brave enough to move at the speed of instruction. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I do look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.